Hey, how's it going, everybody? How you all doing? I hope you are having a good one. How to know if you are in the higher self, if you are acting in your highest potential, your spiritual vision is leading you in life, or is it your ego that's guiding you right now? Is that the one that's in the driver's seat of your being? Hang tight. I'll get to that in a bit here. If you end up by liking the video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, share it around. It helps a ton when it comes to getting this content out to a wider audience. So many thanks. So the ego, not to overly get into it, because if you're watching this video, you may on some level already understand what the ego is, but it's your self-concept. It's who you are, everything you put after I am this, I am that. It's got a purpose in life, even though it can get us into trouble at times. It's our separate self. It's the opposite of unity, of oneness, of community, the whole self. So you could think of community or oneness as the whole tree, and you could think of the ego as just one branch of the tree or one leaf, and that's your identity, right? And in these spiritual concepts, Buddhism, Hinduism, there's Atman and Brahman, there's your individual self, and there's the spiritual self, the spiritual energy of God that connects all things and all beings, right? Now, there are certain qualities of the ego that you can begin to recognize, and that is key in understanding what self is ruling your decision-making process every single day. Now, it's important to realize, like I mentioned, that the ego has a purpose, and we don't want to beat ourselves up if we catch ourselves in the ego. We don't want to get so shameful about these type of situations, because it's natural, and they could just cause more resistance and difficulty in trying to grow and transform if we beat ourselves up for being in the ego or whatever. So now, when we're on autopilot, it's more likely that we'll be in the ego. When we're not really thinking clearly or thinking too much, period, we're not meditating much, we might more likely be subconsciously be driven by the ego's intentions. So the ego, if it's the separate self, its goal is to keep that self-preservation mindset going. It's about me first, right? Like kill or be killed mindset. It's competitive. That's another quality of the ego. It wants to win. It's me versus you minded. Now that can be in our families. It could be in our work environments. Maybe you're competitive with your coworkers. Maybe you're competitive with your spouse at home. It wants to control things, right? So the ego is also about predictability and comfort. That's another quality of the ego. It wants to repeat the past. It wants to hold on to that identity. This is huge. It wants to repeat the past, while the higher self, the spiritual self, is all about growth and change and the new. So in an attempt to maintain the old, the ego will do self-preservation tactics, and you can see how that can play out in your life in very different ways. It might try to control other people so you can get your way, so you can get yours first. It might try to control situations so that you don't suffer or struggle, or which is understandable too, right? You can't get mad at yourself for doing that. It might try to a controlling parent might try to divide their kids against each other and make them competitive against each other as a means to control them, to make their life as a parent easier. Or maybe that parent wants to do that to make their kids succeed in life. Maybe their intention might seem good, but at the end of the day, what's the parent's intention? To make them look good, right? So the ego also cares a lot about what other people think sometimes. I grew up like that, and I still work on that sometimes. Sometimes I care about what people think, and I don't want to care about what people think about me anymore, right? People are going to judge you no matter what you do. Might as well be you. And I'm a lot better at that nowadays. Now, it's if you understand the roots of why your ego does what it does, it helps a ton. So like you look back into your childhood, do inner child work. Me personally, growing up in this kind of culture, my parents grew up on a really small island, right, where everybody knew everybody, and it's understandable why people care so much what other people think, because the island was so small. So if you did something stupid, quote unquote, unconscious, basically when you're a kid or a teenager, everybody would know about it and everybody would talk about it, and you would be the laughing stock. Nowadays, in America, there's so much more diversity here, and it's such a big country that you can be who you want, and there's going to be somebody weirder than you. There's going to be 100 people weirder than you, right? And that's just not how it was. So me personally understanding how I came to be that way helped me grow from it and help me move on from it, because it's easy to just be like, oh, I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't want to be controlling. I don't want my ego to take control of me anymore. I just want to stop. But it's a little bit more of a careful process than that, and understanding the roots of why you grew up that way helps. It helps you be soft, and it helps you just know how to work with it then, not against it. Now, when one gets to this phase of growing and moving past the ego's ways, think about the opposite qualities of those ego qualities. So the opposite of competitiveness is to work together, right? Well, we're on the same team. We're not on different teams, right? So if we're all on the same planet, we all share the ocean, the earth, the trees, the bees, everything works together. Why fight against each other so much? Why work against each other when we should learn to work together, right? Well, it's the egos that keep that from happening. The leaders of the countries keep their egos of my way versus the highway, instead of let's all come together and find like needs and like goals and work on that, put our differences aside, right? And easier said than done anyway. The opposite of being fearful, the ego is oftentimes very fearful, is being very faithful. That's the higher self. Just trusting yourself, trusting God, trusting the universe. So caring about what others think about you. It's always about you and me when it's the ego, right? The opposite of that is not letting other people's perception of you affect how you feel. So the higher self, the spiritual self, is just looking at the big picture. It's looking at the long term. It's another quality of the ego. It's very short-term minded, short-term gain, right? But maybe long-term consequence. The spiritual self is very long-term minded. I really like using pillars like this, opposite polarity-based pillars, to help integrate, grow, and heal. And I have a system called the integration pillars. One of the pillars is long-term versus short-term, helpful, right? And are my habits long-term oriented? Am I learning a new skill? Am I exercising something that takes effort every day or a few times a week and will build up into something nice and big later on? But you might not necessarily feel like Superman after eating healthy one day, right? It takes more consistent. The ego is more short-term gain. It wants to take shortcuts. And that's a really good way to know what side of the pillar you're operating on. And just this is a pillar in itself, ego versus spirit versus higher self. it's more natural the more that you start to observe, and more it makes more sense. So if you're into meditating already or into journal writing, it's a good way to do this type of self inquiry and meditating, clearing up your thoughts, right? Because your mind, when it's going on autopilot, like I said earlier, is more likely to go from the ego. But if you're starting to clear up your mind, or just at least observe your mind, observe your thoughts, you're going to see, wow, those thoughts are very egocentric. I also have some thoughts that might be more spiritual centric, or a lot of times just no thoughts is going to get you to a right place. So there's another way to know, right? Or if you're overthinking something when trying to make a decision, a lot of times that's coming from the ego. Because when it's the higher self or the ego or the spirit rather, it's going to be more of a feeling, a gut feeling, a solid intuition, a solid yes or no. There's no need to overthink it when it's the spirit. And sometimes just action is more easy to flow when it's a higher self oriented take on things. So have fun with this self inquiry. Write, journal, be easy on yourself. And growth is cyclical, not linear. So you might have a week or a month where you're feeling very positive and you're moving in a more higher self direction. Then you might have another challenging week where old thoughts and your old self test you. The old self and the new self come in waves throughout your life, I've learned, and just cruise the waves, ride the waves, take data, meditate, journal, have a goal, have a plan to integrate and be more of a certain way. If you like, acceptance first, though, is key. Don't shame yourself, be kind to yourself, be patient. So that's my take on this topic. Let me know your experience with navigating the higher self versus the ego or the lower self, or whatever you want to call it, however you want to frame this. So it's been a pleasure. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Lots of love. Peace.